I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story and happy 4th of July. I hope you're having a great holiday. All the ways to communicate with us right there at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. You could also use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or you could leave us a voicemail. Call our phone number, 503-226-5090. We're going to start tonight with what I think is an amazing helicopter scene, then talk to one of the people who was on board. Have you seen this? An Oregon Army National Guard helicopter Blackhawk landing on a tiny ridge to offload medics going to help a hurt climber. This is not the Hogsback, by the way. It's to the left of that area as you look at the mountain. It is steep, it's narrow, it's near the Hot Rocks fumarole at about 9,000 feet. Any mistake would be disaster, but they flew it perfectly. The rescue took place Saturday. Today I got to talk with a flight medic, Dan Cleveland, who was on board, then got out onto the mountain to help the climber.
It seems like, just watching the video, the wheels are right on the front edge of the ridge. What was that like for you guys?
To be honest, it's something that we train for. Doing, like I said, a pinnacle landing is a task that the air crew should be proficient in, just because we can't always land everywhere. We can't always hoist everywhere. And so what the pilots, is just amazing when they do it, they'll essentially just put the front tires down and they'll still fly the rest of the aircraft, and they'll just balance it there just long enough for us to get out.
Yeah, that was amazing. And
yeah,
maybe you're used to it, but to the rest of us, you just look at that shot and you go, holy cow, how do they do that?
Yeah, it's impressive to watch for sure. And it is something I would say that I'm probably a little jaded to, just because it is something that we do on a regular basis. Just flying in the Blackhawk in general is an amazing experience.
And was there anything particularly dangerous in the fact that you're dealing with the hot rocks and you've got these volcanic gases coming up?
I didn't notice any of that. There was definitely, in the video, you can see some steam coming off behind us, but that was nothing that we really considered, or I truly considered, just not going over there, to be honest, because a lot of the snow had melted and you can see cracks and fissures in the snow. It's just areas that we would have avoided.
We are so lucky to have those folks in our area. The rescue involved a lot of others, including highly trained volunteers. John Goodwin caught up with one of them today.
There's always risk involved in climbing Mount Hood. It's a technical mountain.
Eric Brahms is a rescue leader with Portland Mountain Rescue.
It's been quite busy this year.
He's been with PMR for 20 years, so he knows the landscape when it comes to Mount Hood.
And it's always important to, know the route, know the conditions, and have a backup plan.
Those conditions change fast, and even for the most experienced mountaineers, controlling what you can isn't always enough. A 43-year-old climber learned that this weekend. Around 6:30 Saturday morning, he lost his ice axe and fell almost 700 feet from the summit ridge at an area called the Old Chute, down to the rocks above the Hot Rocks fumarole, a volcanic vent spewing toxic gas.
A slide at one of those spots usually results in some serious injuries, because once you slide, and unless you self-arrest within just a fraction of a second, you're probably going to, go for a ride.
Brahms led the rescue mission on Saturday. The climber was stabilized and airlifted by the National Guard. No matter what, you should be prepared on Mount Hood, and in the event of an emergency, a call doesn't mean immediate rescue.
It's not like, you call up and the helicopter is going to come and just give you a ride to the hospital. You may have to wait, hours. It was a big team effort, by PMR, the Crag Rats, AMR, and the National Guard and the Clackamas County Sheriff's Department.
Mount Hood is dangerous to climb year-round because of the steep, icy conditions. This was the second accident within the same area in just over a week.
The climb is half over once you get to the summit. You've got to get down safely.
The climber from Happy Valley went to the hospital and is recovering. Brahms is thankful for a best-case scenario.
We were able to get him off the mountain and to the hospital. And yes, he did not go into the fumarole, because that would have added another, layer of, complexity to the mission. And if the outcome may not have been as good.
John Goodwin, KGW News.
Changing gears now. While many of us are enjoying a nice holiday meal, an estimated 200,000 people in Somalia, half a world away, are on the brink of famine. Now I can hear you say, "Thanks, buddy. That really makes my hamburger taste great." Well, sorry. I'm not bringing it up to ruin the holiday mood, but rather to tee up an interview that I did with someone who's trying to make a difference there. I know you're a person who cares about what's happening in the world, and this really has not received that much coverage. It is important, though. It involves the Ukraine war and COVID and drought. Sean Granville-Ross works for Portland-based Mercy Corps. He's the Africa Regional Director. The group is in Somalia now helping people out, but there's so much other stuff going on in the world, this issue is being overlooked. Sean was in Portland recently, and so I got to sit down and talk with him.
All right, good. Yes, so Somalia is in a pretty tough situation right now. The country and the region more broadly, the Horn of Africa, we haven't seen rain for 4 consecutive rainy seasons. And the forecasts are the 5th one, due later this year, is likely to also fail. So right now you're in a situation where the country has struggled for the last couple of years with political situation of elections, government infighting. Somalia is a federal state, so you have the federal government and then you have the states. So there hasn't been necessarily a governance structure in place. Somalia is also a place with Al-Shabaab and the inevitable challenges of conflict. And so plenty of poor and vulnerable people who primarily are livestock is the primary economic driver. Once you have no rain, then you have drought, then you have limited rangeland, limited fodder. People started initially migrating in search of fresh pastures and water, but with the consecutive rains, we've then begun to see animals dying, people basically lose their livelihoods, and then themselves start to migrate into displaced camps. The more visual ones are around the bigger cities, Mogadishu, Kismayu, Baidoa. And so there we're now seeing larger numbers of displaced people who've lost everything.
And does this mostly affect then the people, the rural folks who are out on the land as opposed to the urban dwellers?
Yeah, mainly it's the rural folks, right? The poor and the vulnerable who've been impacted already by conflict, right? And the breakdown of economic opportunities, the provision of services. So you already had vulnerable people that are sort of struggling with their livelihoods, and then their livelihood is really susceptible to sort of the changes in climate, drought, rainfall, critical to their livelihood.
Which makes people desperate, and maybe it's the reason that groups like the terrorist group that you mentioned are active, and we always hear about the Somali pirates taking on ships off the coast there.
Right. Yeah, so, conflict and sort of the complexity of the conflict of Somalia is definitely just going to be exacerbated by these sorts of situations where you have drought and people who have lost everything are then going to inevitably be even more vulnerable.
And how often do the rainy seasons come? Is that once a year?
So there's a long rains and a short rains. In Somalia, they talk of the gu rains, which are the long rains, right? And so those normally fall September, October, November is the long rains. And then we have the short rains in the beginning of the year, February, March, April.
So when you say so many rain seasons have been missed, is that, how many years is that?
That's now 2.5 years. And then in Somalia, like much of the world, but certainly in Somalia, right, it's the perfect storm right now. We had COVID, we have a drought, and then we have the compounding impacts of the Ukraine conflict and the increases in fuel prices and commodity prices. So, that just makes everything a little bit more difficult.
And why can't the government come in to help those people?
There is no government. Well, there is a government, but there is no real economy in Somalia. That's part of the challenges of a place like Somalia, right? Developing country, trying to also enable and establish the government structures and the governance structures and processes to allow the political system, the economic and the social systems to really function in those sort of places.
So how many people do you think are in danger now?
So in the Horn of Africa, if we talk about Kenya, Somalia and Ethiopia, we now talk of approximately 20 million people who are hungry, who are food insecure, right? The exact numbers in Somalia, I don't have to hand, but what we do know in Somalia right now, the latest numbers give us about 220,000 people who are essentially at the point of starvation. The technical language, they talk about IPC3, but IPC5 is the point of real concern. So in Somalia, there are about 200,000. We talk about 7 million livestock have now died in Somalia. So yeah,
it's all just from lack of rain and lack of water.
Rain, yeah. Essentially, it's the lack of rain and the change in climate.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that the reason there's not been rain?
Yeah. Yes. I think what you're seeing also, right, is in the Horn of Africa, we know there's a drought cycle, and historically, droughts have been on a 5 to 8 year cycle, and now we're beginning to see them happen more frequently. So the last drought was 2016, 2017. There was the 2011 drought. There was a 2008 drought. Then you can remember back into the early 80s, the 90s, the big droughts of the early 80s. Remember the famine of Ethiopia in the mid 80s. So people, those that track the numbers and look at the situation, definitely this is one of the more concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine because, we have homeless on the streets here, but there's so many programs that help people that don't have anything literally to eat that it's hard to imagine that there's people dying outside of cities.
Yes. Yeah. The situation in a place like Somalia and some of those life stories of where families are far from places where they can get help. They're already weak and vulnerable. They lose all their livestock. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They walk a long way. Inevitably, they even lose some of their children on the way in to try and find help.
And how does it end?
So, I think that's where the opportunities for organizations such as Mercy Corps can play their part, right? We need to meet the immediate needs of the people of Somalia, of the people in the Horn of Africa, and increasingly the humanitarian sector has got better and better at how you do emergency response, right? Provide cash to allow people to choose what they want to do, understand how we can provide water, the needs for shelter, the needs for non-food items. This situation is a little bit more complicated because of the impacts of the Ukraine conflict, the increase in prices of fuel and commodities, the market that normally we assume is present. We give people money so that they can choose what they want to buy, food, and meet their other immediate needs. The market doesn't necessarily have the quantities or the availabilities to meet the needs of the people. So our emergency response needs to be a little bit more creative, both providing immediate support to the people themselves, but thinking about how we support the food traders, for example, to ensure that there is food available for the people to buy. And then I think more importantly, longer term, we need to understand how do we continue to build the abilities and the capacities of the government, the communities, the civil society, if you like, to understand how you mitigate long-term impacts of things such as drought, right?
It's interesting that Ukraine is having an impact there just like it's having an impact here.
Right.
It hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah, the Ukraine impact is worldwide. And certainly in the Western world, the impact of the Ukraine is more skewed towards fertilizer, more skewed towards increases in fuel and access to gas in Europe and all of those things. In the Horn of Africa, for sure, we've seen an increase in the fuel prices. That has an impact on everything in life and also drives up the price of not only food, but all the other commodities in the market.
And with so many things going on in the world, are you worried that this is just being ignored or overlooked?
That's been part of the challenge, right? That's why we're talking today. So the Horn of Africa and the drought has been one of those places of a bit of frustration in that organizations such as ourselves, the UN and others, we were really trying to get attention to the situation back in December, January, February, and the world was beginning to realize we had a situation unfolding of humanitarian need. Then the Ukraine crisis happened. Everybody disappeared for about 3 or 4 months. And it's only now that people are beginning to realize the world is complex and complicated, and there are a number of humanitarian disasters and number of needs across the world, right? The Horn of Africa, the Sahel, Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria, just to name a few.
Hard to think about, but important. New laws usually take effect at the beginning of the year, but some changes are happening now, 6 months into 2022, including a raise for minimum wage workers in Oregon. Plus, I'm going to guess you're already maybe hearing fireworks, even if you live in an area where they are illegal. You have a lot of opinions about fireworks. We'll read some of those when we come back. Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com or give us a call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. It's now July. Congratulations. We've made it about halfway through 2022, and a handful of new laws are now in effect in Oregon and Washington. In Oregon, if you're a minimum wage worker, you just got a raise. The Oregon minimum wage went up by 75 cents. That means in the Portland area, it now stands at $14.75 an hour. In populated areas outside the metro region, minimum wage is now $13.50, and in rural areas, it's $12.50. This is the last increase based on the state law that changed in 2016. Other new laws taking effect this month are geared toward workers in Oregon and Washington. New laws require employers to provide shade, water, and cool-down breaks for people working in high heat, and employers have to protect workers from smoke during the fire season. New laws in Washington include a ban on selling or distributing high-capacity gun magazines. High capacity is defined as one that can accept and feed more than 10 rounds. It is not illegal to have one if you already own one. Another law makes it illegal to have a gun or gun kit without serial numbers. It's an attempt to crack down on ghost guns, which are untraceable. And license plates just got more expensive in Washington. When you buy a new car, the plate fee is now $50. It used to be $10. Tonight's a big night for fireworks. Love them or hate them, it's probably going to get a little loud in your neighborhood when the sun goes down tonight. Neighborhood fireworks are banned in both Portland and Vancouver, but they are legal in several other areas, including in the city of Beaverton. Last week, we asked you for your thoughts on fireworks, and hello, did you have a lot to say. Kim was raised in Vancouver and loves the professional shows, but not the neighborhood fireworks. This year, we are going to the Hillsboro Hops baseball game and enjoy fireworks after the game. What fun that will be, she wrote. And Pam wrote in to say, in 1967-68, I was an Army nurse serving in Vietnam. Since returning from Nam, the noise from neighborhood fireworks is always a trigger for flashbacks. It makes holidays like the 4th of July and New Year's Eve just something I have to get through, not something I enjoy. Sorry to hear that. And Sue wants us to know it's not just an issue for veterans.
I think it's well past time it's recognised that there are many more of us who are not veterans that are also triggered. I myself lost my teen son who shot himself 7 years ago. I will be joining a lot of people this year, once again, probably tranquilizing myself to keep myself calm, wearing things like headphones and earplugs, and waiting to be startled and surprised.
Sorry to hear that, Sue. Hang in there. Nina writes to say, on the other hand, why must the majority of people give up their rights to accommodate the minority of people? I strongly disagree in banning fireworks because many people suffer from PTSD. I suffer from PTSD, she writes, myself, and nearly jump out of my skin from unexpected loud noises. I'm often left trembling afterwards. I absolutely love fireworks, especially mortars, because of the beautiful displays and not the noise. And a different Kim writes in to say, we always love the neighborhood gatherings around the 4th and good fireworks that some would bring. Many of those folks have passed away, as have the times we enjoyed. Change is inevitable, and mostly for the better. Thanks to all of you who wrote in to share your thoughts and who called in. If you missed your chance, you can still shoot me an email tonight or leave me a voicemail. Our email address is thestory@kgw.com or call 503-226-5090. Let me know your fireworks experience and your stories, good or bad, all are welcome. When we come back, there's still a lot of good people in the world. She was hit and badly hurt by a drunk driver, but this Southeast Portland woman is coming back strong and taking a moment to celebrate the strangers who helped save her life. Now to a story of resilience and a call for change. A local woman is celebrating a year of being alive after a terrible crash. She was hit by a drunk driver exactly a year ago. And although she is not fully recovered, she is back on her feet. Galen Etlin shares the event that reunited her with the people who helped save her life.
A peaceful bike ride Sunday came with more than sunshine.
Be safe and take care of each other out there.
Estelle Morley helped organize this Pedalpalooza event for victims of vehicular violence.
A celebration of my second chance at life.
It was here, 4th of July weekend 2021, at the intersection of Southeast Lynn and 17th in Portland, where a drunken driver hit Estelle on her bike, critically injuring her.
Had an open femur fracture, open ulnar radial fracture. I broke 9 of 11 ribs.
She was put under 13 times for surgeries, and after many months of therapy at OHSU, could finally walk again.
I'm glad to be alive.
Some in the crowd here are the neighbors who rushed to her side after that crash.
Someone put a blanket on me. People held my hand and sang songs and asked me questions to keep me conscious.
To each person who showed up, Estelle gave a hug.
So proud of you. This is so incredible.
And Portland police officer Peter Brown gave her one too. He was the first to respond to the crash.
It's one of the worst ones I've seen. I'm glad to meet you.
Estelle's loved ones invited him here so the two could meet for the first time since that day, exactly a year ago.
Very often we see people at their lowest points. We see a lot of really awful things, and we don't know what happens next.
Estelle couldn't hold back the tears.
Why did I wear mascara?
Saying Officer Brown's actions that day helped save her leg and her life.
Anybody who puts on the uniform, signs up to do the job, is to be there when it matters.
All right, everybody.
And what mattered on this day was togetherness.
Love one another, because that's what it's all about.
And an awareness of road safety. Estelle hopes her story catches the attention of PBOT and ODOT to help improve biking infrastructure and education.
A responsibility to be stewards and to be safe.
As the group reached Milwaukee Bay Park, they celebrated.
This is a reflection of my community.
Sharing joy.
In the world where there's a lot to be sad and scared about, it is incredibly powerful to have something to feel hopeful about.
And sharing gratitude for a bike ride that came with more than sunshine.
Just recognizing that we have an impact on each other.
Galen Etlin, KGW News.
Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. Still ahead, even though summer just got started, we're already thinking about back to school. How you can help kids who will need school supplies. Coming up next. The KGW School Supply Drive starts in August. Last year we collected school supplies for more than 15,000 kids. This year we want to help even more because over 50% of students start without the supplies they need. So we need a little help from you right now. And by the way, we're not asking for money, at least not at this moment. Just go to kgw.com/school, sign up your organization, and we'll send a collection kit so you can help collect school supplies for your school district. And together, we'll help get our kids ready to return to the schools in the fall. Hey, that's the end of our program. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends.